Okay, here we go. Because I seem to be under the frankly ridiculous impression that people might care what I think, I've compiled a list of my top 10 games of 2017. A fact that you could probably figure out from the video title, unless of course you can't read and were drawn to it by the absolutely dazzling thumbnail that my future self will no doubt produce. Thanks, future Joe. Anyway, this list is obviously only going to include games released this year, and even more bizarrely, only games that I have actually played. So that means no Breath of the Wild, no Mario Odyssey, no Splatoon 2, no weird Rabid XCOM thing, because I don't own a Switch. And there's no doubt other games absent from this list for the same reason, so if your favourite game isn't here, I'm sorry, but I'm only one man. Buy it for me on Steam and I might retcon this list just for you. But for now, this is what we're stuck with, I'm afraid. I should add that this video is semi-scripted, unlike my other videos, so if I seem inexplicably verbose, then that's why. Although I did just ad-lib the word verbose, so maybe I'm getting better at this, I don't know. Right, that's enough prattling over a black screen, let's get on with it, shall we? This year brought us lots of remakes and remasters as the industry desperately attempted to recapture the nostalgia for those gaming classics, but meanwhile the AAA industry continued to vomit forth sequel after sequel to games everyone was tired of 10 years ago, and indie devs attempted to grab their slice of the pie by jumping onto the spiritual successor bandwagon. My number 10 game, however, was the very antithesis of this. It was a game that carried over the name of a much-loved title from the last generation, but left pretty much everything else behind.
Number 10. Prey.
Essentially a full reboot with practically non-existent ties to the source material, Prey managed to stand up as a compelling game on its own merits, a concept which seems somewhat lost to a lot of the big publishers these days, delivering unto us a most exciting sci-fi shooter that I've played since System Shock 2. The big draw for me was the ability possessed by even the most basic enemies to transform into household objects, essentially leaving you unable to trust anything. That pizza box, it might be an enemy. That urinal cake could well be trying to rip out your esophagus the next time your back is turned. Which is quite an impressive feat to do from behind, to be honest. It instills the game with this ongoing sense of tension, which is honestly far more spooky than anything a lot of so-called horror games can deliver. Beyond that, I'm a big fan of anything that can incorporate talent trees into the mix. Each of the specializations in this game provides a very different way to play, meaning that the game will end up catering to your playstyle and might feel very different in subsequent playthroughs. The manner in which this game drip feeds its story, offering steady world building juxtaposed against these huge plot twists, is almost Bioshock level masterful, even if the ending is a little weak. And the world design is so tightly put together that it can make even the most mundane fight feel like a scripted set piece. No game is perfect, of course, and this one is no exception. Not to give anything away, but the story completely runs out of steam towards the end. The difficulty curve likes to swing from cakewalk to oh god why at the drop of a hat, and while I know this is nitpicky, the overly cartoony character designs can really harm the otherwise pretty intense atmosphere. But hey, I'd still rather see more slightly flawed gems like this being released than another yearly installment of Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty.
Number 9. Ukulele.
Uh-oh, I'm gonna get shit for this. Or I would if anyone watched my videos anyway. Now before I start praising Ukulele, allow me to reiterate that I haven't played Mario Odyssey or A Hat in Time, so maybe in comparison those games make this one look garbage, but honestly I had a lot of fun with this. See, I grew up in the N64 era. I played Mario and Donkey Kong and Spyro and Croc and Crash Bandicoot, and games like that will always provide that special nostalgic twinge that hits me right in my withered old cynical heart. And after a nearly 20-year hole in the 3D mascot platformer market, it felt so unbelievably fun to get to jump back into a colourful, upbeat, wacky world and just enjoy some carefree, lizard-based adventures. I personally really enjoyed exploring each world, solving the various puzzles and helping the NPCs, most of whom were the sort of unique, amusing creations that were once common in video games but have fallen out of fashion with the rise of the angry shooter men. There were flaws, sure, the graphics were dated, the camera could be a bitch, and the game very often felt painfully easy, but here's the thing. I like being able to breeze through a world in 20 minutes, grabbing the easy pages, but knowing there were Whole sections of the map left unexplored and full of genuinely tricky platforming sections which could provide me with a more decent challenge when I returned. I liked the dumb jokes and the ridiculous, cheesy way that practically every inanimate object had a face and a personality. I loved the bright colour palette and the simple yet striking design, the obvious throwbacks to an era of gaming that I grew up with. I mean, sure, my nostalgia was played like a fiddle, but it's impossible for me to look back on this year of gaming and not consider the time I spent with Ukulele to be a highlight.
Number 8. For the King.
If you want to talk bang for buck, then very little beats For the King. Me and two friends picked it up on sale for a few quid, and so far I've had over 50 hours of happy fun times with it. The game plays out as an RPG / board game / roguelike, a genre tag that takes longer to say than it does to describe. Essentially, you take it in turns to move your character around a board, fighting enemies in classic Final Fantasy style battles and completing various quests in an attempt to amass gear and level ups and take down the big scary wizard who lives in a tower and is a bit of a dick. Everything you do is based off dice rolls, providing a real down-to-basics feel, and the combat is technical and highly animated, and has you utilising a variety of skills based on starting class and gear. Your entire approach to fights will change on the fly as you pick up a new sword with different skills on it, and there's always something new to discover. A randomly generated boss might appear and drive up trade prices, or start interfering with your rolls, and maybe you'll stumble across a cave full of armour-munching slime and rigged full of bizarre traps. This isn't a game you'll complete on your first try, and it might take hours of your time to do so, but when you're halfway through an 8-hour game with a party of you and 2 of your mates, and you're praying to God that your glass sword doesn't break on that ogre's face, you'll find yourself having more fun just playing the game than you ever would from completing it. My only real gripe lies with the random nature of the game. It's weird to say, but its biggest strength and its biggest weakness are actually the same thing. See, your first game might be boring as hell and put you off playing completely, or it might show you wonders the like of which no man has ever seen. But them's the breaks, I guess.
Number 7. Resident Evil 7.
I'll be honest, I was not expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did. Although I have a soft spot for Resi 2, I've been consistently disappointed by the series ever since, yes, even by the much-loved Resi 4. I find that if you add too much action, it tends to dilute the horror, and this franchise has always tried far too hard to have its cake and eat it. God, I'd kill for some cake right now. No, Joe, focus. Resi 7, yes, it was great, wasn't it? That hillbilly family were just the right level of messed up to leave you panic from the get-go, and as the game progresses you find out more about their crazy superpowers, and they only get more intimidating. Being stalked around the house by the regenerating remains of the dad only minutes after hitting him with a car and blowing half his head off makes for some of the most relentlessly terrifying gameplay there is to be experienced. Oh, spoiler warning by the way, sorry about that. And it's great how this game manages to balance gunplay and survival horror by providing you with increasingly powerful weapons, which shred the normal guys, but are nonetheless pretty ineffectual against the main antagonists. The house is realistically proportioned, and yet still fun to explore, and packed full of clever little puzzles, some of which you have to solve in the few seconds of breathing room before the monster of the moment finds you hiding under the table crying to yourself like a little girl. The real strength, of course, is the characters. They're all so believably crazy that the human sides are somehow more terrifying than the mutant halves. The game is a glorious, non-stop thrill ride. Nice buzzwords there, Joe. But it really is. It's tense, it's cathartic, it's clever, and it has a great twist. I wouldn't call this a return to form so much as a new standard for good Resi games.
Number 6. Pyre.
Well, this was going to be in here somewhere, wasn't it? Honestly, any other year this game could have won the top spot, but sweet baby Jesus and all the disciples, this was a good year. Pyre, for the scum who are watching this video without having seen my Let's Play, and you know who you are, and I'm very disappointed in you. Pyre marks a hat-trick for indie legend Supergiant, a third beautiful, poignant, painfully compelling and unforgettable game that has wormed its way into my all-time favourites. First off, it looks and sounds amazing. The panoramas of the downside are even more gorgeous than anything found in their previous titles, and Darren Korb has once again gone all out on a soundtrack which never fails to set the tone perfectly for whatever is going on screen. The 3v3 football style rights are hectic as hell and make up for some surprisingly deep and strategic gameplay despite only being delivered in short 2 to 3 minute bursts. The majority of the game, though, is more focused on the narrative, getting to know the world and your diverse little group of companions who each have their own distinct personality, backstory and personal complexities. The fact that once every few games you get the opportunity to free one of your companions from the downside makes for a surprisingly deep little gimmick. Do you help your favourites to escape, or keep them with you while you help free the people you don't even like? It may sound like a minor thing on paper, but I genuinely agonised over this for a long time, especially once it became clear that there wouldn't be many of these opportunities left. Like Bastion and Transistor before it, Pyre is a game that takes its story very seriously, and as much as I enjoyed blasting worms and swamp hags with magical aura beams in order to open up a clear path for a touchdown into their pyre, the real strength of this game lies in the little interactions which help make those characters feel so damn real.
Number 5. What Remains of Edith Finch?
I'm sure you're all familiar with the inordinate amount of hate levelled at so-called walking simulators, and while I don't think they should necessarily be rated on the same metric as more conventional games, I absolutely disagree with anyone who attempts to devalue them as some sort of lesser experience. However, while I have fond memories of the first time I played Dear Esther and Journey, I believe that the best games in the field are the ones which try to do something different with the formula. The Stanley Parable provided a portal-esque quirkiness to proceedings. To the Moon gave us light puzzle elements and a top-down sprite-based aesthetic. The Unfinished Swan had that cool thing where you discover the world by throwing paint at it. Soma mixed in flavours of stealth and survival horror. What Remains of Edith Finch is the next in that line of prestigious games, a heartfelt, beautiful little game which tells the story of a young woman returning to her childhood home to find out about the lives and deaths of her ancestors. I don't want to give anything away here, but the game is structured with this old sprawling house serving as a fully explorable hub world, with each of the ancestral memories opening out into a unique set piece flavoured with the personality of the family member in question. The story is best told by the game itself, but let me put it this way, not once throughout those memories are you just walking, and not once did I find myself anything less than fully invested in what was happening. I'm not usually one for disconnected short stories, but the way they're presented here and the way in which they all tie back to the titular character, it really is something special.
Number 4. Sonic Mania.
Oh yes. I raged, I complained, I got so damn salty with a certain octopus that I had to take a several day break, but god damn it, Sonic Mania was the best damn platformer I have played in decades. As with Ukulele, I'm certain a lot of it was just my nostalgia playing horrible tricks on me, but I don't care. This was Sonic as it should be. This was exploring exciting new worlds, jamming to glorious chiptune music loops and going fast but never mindlessly so. This was fine-tuned platforming, finding secrets and figuring out boss mechanics. This was flying in a goddamn plane over a goddamn desert in order to hijack a goddamn train full of goddamn robots. This was bizarre bonus levels that made literally no sense. This was smashing Robotnik's crazy machines, freeing woodland creatures, and being a hero without spewing any obnoxious, angsty dialogue. This is Sonic without the input of those inept fuckwits over at Sonic Team, and it was bloody fantastic.
Number 3. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Oh, where to start with this one? Hellblade was not a fun experience. Hellblade was harrowing. It was watching a young woman get put through the ringer emotionally, physically and mentally, and having to be right there with her the whole time. The incredible voice acting and mocap made the whole thing as fantastical as it was, with all the descending through hell and hunting gods. It made it seem so damn real, and while you're struggling to solve a puzzle and the voices in Senua's head are taunting you and putting you down, you feel every bit as angry and upset as the character must. When you're engaging in slick swordplay and hacking up an endless stream of demon creatures, you feel all the more cathartic thrill as you vent those frustrations which have been instilled by the less tangible enemies. It's a roller coaster of a game. Any satisfaction from overcoming a challenge is soon beaten back down by the realization that the odds are always stacked against you, and that's the great thing. Hellblade stirs up feelings that other games can only dream of touching on, and while it's rarely a fun experience, it is always a memorable one. And god damn is it clever too. The big end-of-game plot twist might be obvious once you think about it, but it's handled so damn well that it's hard to care. The game is far and away one of the most gripping, compelling titles of the year, and guess what? No publishers involved. What a funny coincidence.
Number 2. Rikuo.
Oh dear God. Rikuo might not have been as horrifying or dramatic as Hellblade, but god damn was it more depressing. This low-budget sprite game was, rather unsurprisingly, made by one of the people behind To the Moon, and if anything, this one outdoes its predecessor. Set half in the imagination of a sick child and half in his hospital-based reality, you can tell from the get-go that this is going to be a video game equivalent of an album by the Antlers. But this game is so much more than just a young boy struggling with his own mortality. The course of the game sees him get to know his fellow patients and attempt to help them with their own problems with varying degrees of success. And each tale is essentially an increasingly more violent punch to the gut. And this game is so good at lowering you into a false sense of security too. The Wonderland sections are so bright and cheery and feel like a classic adventure game, and then it hits like a brick when all of that comes crashing down in favour of the harsh reality of the hospital. So Joe, I hear you ask, are you honestly giving this game the number 2 spot on the basis that it's really, really sad? And my answer to that is, well, kinda yeah. Maybe that's a weak basis to rate a game so highly, but this game made me feel feelings I didn't even know existed, and I feel like it deserves credit for that. Oh, and the sprite art's nice too, so there's that.
Number 1. Persona 5.
And here we are at the top spot. No game this year took up more of my time than Persona 5. No game had me eagerly anticipating my free time, like Persona 5. No game had me wasting countless hours of my real life in a virtual world hanging out with my virtual friends long after I'd maxed out their friendship ratings, just because I wanted to. I honestly know the characters in this fucking game better than I know a lot of my real life friends, and that scares me a little bit. But great characters aside, here's why this game is great. Number 1. It's a classic turn-based RPG with a heavy focus on strategy and learning your opponents, made by a AAA developer in an era when such games are supposedly dead. Number 2. Despite being turn-based, it had some of the greatest, most intense boss fights I've ever had in any game, period. Number 3. It has a sleek, endlessly pleasing aesthetic, constructed out of blissful smooth jazz and seamless screen transitions which help its striking black and red colour palette to really pop. Number 4, it's anime as fuck and doesn't give a shit what you think. Number 5, it features a talking cat that turns into a bus. Number 6, the world is meticulously designed, with something to do on every corner and interesting events popping up near constantly. Number 7, your character is basically a silent protagonist, but is so damn cool that no one notices. Number 8, it's dark as shit. Edgy as that sounds, it's really refreshing to see games deal with themes like rape and suicide in a mature way. Number 8, go back and listen to what I said about number 1 again, because that shit is important. Look, I know that Persona isn't everyone's cup of tea, or whatever beverage you prefer, but I had an absolute blast with it, and once I got into it, it was basically impossible for me to put it down. And when you hate games as much as I do, that's saying something. Anyway, that's my list. Please feel free to go on an all caps rant about why all my opinions are wrong and why I'm retarded for not including Breath of the Wild even though I've never played it in the comments section. I could do with having this immense ego of mine taken down a few pegs. Seriously though, 2017 has been a pretty damn good year for releases, and honestly, loot box controversy aside, it seems like it might have been something of a turning point regarding the increased production of quality games in the AAA sphere. Here's to a brighter future in gaming and a glorious 2018, in which we might even see the release of Ni no Kuni 2. Maybe. Perhaps. And now I'm sad again. See you later, people.